Hey friends! Hey friends, welcome back. Today we are getting into the meat of things. We're going to get into actually doing some self-tissue release on more deep, nerdy pelvic floor muscles. So just as a reminder of where we've gone up until now, got Fred here. He has a loose leg, so I hope he doesn't lose it in this video. We've already gone for the psoas, which is what a lot of people think of when they think of just pain problems, really honestly anywhere in this vicinity in the torso. So that's coming from behind the diaphragm and then coming down into here. We already did that in a previous video and I'll link to these in the description. We also already went for the quadratus lumborum, which attaches bottom rib to top of pelvis. We also have done the piriformis, which is more so in here. That's a big problem for a lot of people when they think of piriformis syndrome or sciatica. Today, what we're gonna go for are the three other main places that I find create issues for people with regard to pelvic floor pain. And once again, this also goes for lower back pain. We have the iliacus, which actually lines the ilia, and it oftentimes gets looped together with the psoas to be called the iliopsoas. We're also gonna look at some of the deeper rotators that actually are in here, the quadratus femoris, and then the obturators, internus and externus. So those guys are gonna kind of be down in this vicinity. And then we're also going to look at the pectineus, which I call the pesky pectineus. And that's going from kind of here into here. So it's kind of your upper inner thigh muscle, or really your groin muscle. You can do these things with hands. I will show you how to do it with hands, but I also really love a couple tools, which I'll make reference to in just a little bit. So we're first going to go for the pesky pectineus. This is a bigger issue for people who have anterior pelvic tilt. So think if you fan your tail feathers, have a lower back arch. It's also an issue for me a little bit more so because I do one of those, you know, like the sassy female position where your foot's turned out and you kind of have your hip popped out to the side. This could also be an issue then if you've had children and you're used to, you know, propping up a baby on one hip. If the foot is turned out on that side, or if you have feet that are generally turned out, or if one foot's more turned out than another, this could kind of be a hot spot for you. So once again, I will show you how to do this with just fingers. It's totally sufficient with fingers, but you could use a massager with like a pointy tip that I'll make reference to in the next video because I think it's more handy for the next couple things. So if I lay back, and I'm looking in this groin pocket right in here, and once again, it's starting right at the pubic symphysis. So what I'm trying to do is almost take my fingers and brush away and scoop away. So I can kind of do that. So my position here that I'm doing is like that. You can also add in motion. So I kind of will swoop away as I drop my thigh, and it kind of creates a counter pull. And you can also, we've done this kind of in other videos here, where you'll keep it out to the side, you'll slide away, rotate, and then pull back. And so I'm kind of, as I do that, I'm pulling in this way. As my leg extends, I'm kind of pulling upwards. And then as I rotate my thigh to go with knee back to the ceiling, I'm sinking back. So then I can also reverse that. And then here, I'm gonna swoop away. So once again, I'm down here, I come back, and then I'm pulling it in as I do that. So I'll do that one more time. I'm swooping down, pulling towards my pubic symphysis, and back up. So we'll do the other side briefly. I'll let this leg go down. So I find my pocket. I'm pinning away, swooping this way. And again, I'm swooping. And then now I go like this. As my leg goes straight, I'm going down. Thigh rotates, I'm pulling back. Like that. Down and back. And then I reverse, so now I'm scooping the ice cream basically away from my chin. Kind of pin that muscle towards the pubic symphysis and then let it go into the pocket. You can also kind of keep it in there and just sort of, you know, gently move around like you're trying to agitate the tissue to release it. You could also do both sides simultaneously and kind of pin and swoop together as the knees go out to the side, and you could do the same sequence with both knees at the same time. Okay, let's get into the iliacus next. So next we're getting into the iliacus. This is one of the cases where I like having some kind of a massager because it can get fatiguing on the hands. I particularly like this attachment, but even more so for the next exercise that we're gonna do. This one's really nice too because it disperses it versus this one's pointed. So it just would kind of depend on personal preference here. I like this particular massager versus some of the other ones out there because it's vibrational plus percussive. You don't necessarily want to go into these areas and be pummeling your abdomen or pummeling your pelvic floor. But I will show you more so with my fingers for this one. The iliacus could be tied on somebody if you're an anterior or a posterior pelvic tilt. If you've had children, but I've honestly seen this be the case with people who haven't had children, if you suffer from lower back pain, there's a chance that you may even want to invest in a pelvic floor belt. So essentially it's a belt that you wear around your hips, and if you think about the butterfly bones of the ilia, it kind of gradually pulls them together, which would decompress the lower back. They can be lifesavers and magical. One of the ways that you would know if it's something that would be good for you is if you stand and you just gently compress the sides of your pelvis and see if you feel like you get a relaxation feeling. It might be worth the $25 to $50. I'll put a link to the one that I've had the best client response from on this. You don't want to get them too big because they'll ride up on you as you're bending over and doing things. I mean, you want to be able to wear it and be functional. Okay, so iliacus. So it's easiest to get at the iliacus if you lay on your side. And once again, we're kind of going for this inner aspect of the pelvis. So here's the top of my pelvic bone, what we think of as like the hip socket. And similar idea here, I'm trying to scoop away from the bone. So I'm kind of digging in there and swooping away. When I work on this on clients and I'm doing this for them, I also will kind of hook on here and traction down away from the ear. You could kind of play with doing that yourself, or if you kind of try to hook your fingers inside of the pelvis and roll, in addition to just the swooping, scooping motions. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the other side. This is a pretty major core compensation muscle. I know it's a deal for me because I hold my tension in my guts. So if you're somebody who has digestive issues, it would be an interesting experiment to try this before attempting any core work. And I say this thinking I should probably do that more often. Okay, so I've done my swooping away. Don't be afraid too to get closer down to the pubic symphysis. And then I'm hooking and I'm tractioning away. So my back just adjusted. Speaking of where I hold my tension. Cool. Okay, the last group that we're gonna get to are those deep hip rotators, the obturators, and right at that sit bone area. And that is really, hands down, I really like having the massager, so I'll show you a couple options. So one way I like to get at the obturators is, this may not be in everybody's mobility, but what we're essentially trying to do is take that bottom tip of the pelvis at the sit bone and pull it diagonally backwards. So I guess I don't need to turn this on, but I would turn it on. And then I kind of get in there, I actually do it like this a lot of times, and I'll push backwards. So we're still at the same idea of like a swooping. So I hook it into the bone there, and I pull diagonally to the back. So like so. This thing is great for really being able to hook at the ischial tuberosity and actually be able to create a greater tenting spread of the pelvic floor. So if I show that on this side, that looks like so. So pulling back and away. Back and away. Way to get at that otherwise is, I can go back to side lying. And then I'm essentially trying to hook with my finger. So there's my ischial tuberosity is right there. So I'm kind of just hooking inside of it. And I'm gently gonna slowly start to pull. And you might start to feel some things relax. Like remember I've talked about how these muscles also refer up into the neck in previous episodes. I can actually feel my neck releasing right now. To be honest, you don't need much time. Like 30 seconds to a minute can do a lot. So I'll quick go to the other side. Some hooking. Diagonal pull. And I guess in an ideal world here, I would have my head neutral. So I'd be on a pillow. This is definitely a much more relaxed version than how I usually go about it. Yeah. I can also now feel like it's easier to breathe on my right side. Cool. It's seriously magical. You should try it. So another way to get at releasing those chronic tension areas in the sphincters in the pelvis would be obviously using a vibrator. You could go into the vaginal opening in particular and just gently try to create some release there. Another way would be to use butt plugs. Just make sure you use lots of lubricant, get various sizes, and remember that those areas do reverberate into other areas of the body. So if you have chronic jaw tension, maybe be more open-minded and give it a shot. All right, so as with these other videos, we've done the release work, and then now we want to get into the re-engagement work. One of the best ways to re-engage and strengthen the pelvic floor in full range of motion is a squat. I've already done a video on that, so I'll link to that here. So what we're gonna play with here is more of a mental activation, but I think something's happening. It's just that it's often so subtle that people don't always feel it. So one of my favorite books, if you can see here, we have this figure 8 around the two sphincters, but then we also have this triangular muscle that connects into really the pubic symphysis. So in an ideal world, you would practice isolating those muscles. I'll put a link to that book in the description. It's my favorite pelvic floor book, and there's all kinds of really great, not only descriptions, but also exercises that you can do. So you can play with the figure 8 muscle where you would essentially, you're thinking about pulling more up and in, so it's not a choking off. I always say it's not a constipation view, but you wanna feel like you can pull up and pull up. So for women, I say, and this is where this might sound kind of crass, but I say to put the tampon in and then also hold your poo at the same time, but think of it coming more up and in. Or I guess you could also think about putting something up there. For men, I often talk about engaging, like pulling up on both testicles. You would ideally though want to start to see if you could differentiate between the left and right. So like, can you engage for women IQ labia, lift one labia, release, lift the other labia. And then to get that triangular muscle, it's kind of letting both of the holes down there relax and then just trying to lift up ever so gently on the pubic symphysis. So a lot of this are things that we do in intercourse. So see if you can kind of tap into some of those sensations that you're able to isolate and pull up on that area. Like for women, pulling up on the clitoris essentially to try to get that front triangle to engage. Finding this connection might be easier when you focus on your exhalations, because remember from the last video, the exhalation is when ideally that pelvic floor is lifting on the exhalation. So if you can find the release on the inhalations and really relax your holes on the inhalations, then you can play with some of these isolations of the triangle / the figure 8 / front side of the figure 8 / back side of the figure 8. And then another way of practicing the release, because we're not always talking about engagement of like tensing or lifting on these muscles, is to also pay attention that as you go to the bathroom to try to actually relax those areas, relax the figure 8, and then instead push down on your diaphragm and feel like your diaphragm, like your upper core, is what can actually cause the elimination to happen. A lot of times I see this in parents who you're rushing to go to the bathroom, particularly moms, where you've only got a few seconds and then you're holding so much tension down there that it'll come out in like a really fast stream. Long term, that is really not good for pelvic floor health. Same kind of goes for men with prostate and like slowing down to a trickle later, trying to feel like you can have that release and use it as an opportunity to connect to your breath and to get your diaphragm to engage. So going to the bathroom can be core work. It doesn't always have to be crunches. Thanks for watching, friends. Next few episodes, we'll get into some basic and intermediate exercises, as well as what are some of the emotional underpinnings as to why we shut off from these areas. Thanks for watching. you.